What's up, Brew Crew? Opie here. Welcome back to my Brew City Garden. Boy, what a difference a week makes for the tomato bucket system. Man, the tomatoes are already taking off like gangbusters, which I didn't really expect because it's been still fairly cool and very, very wet. Luckily for me, it has been very wet. So I haven't really had to worry about the buckets even when I'm out of town. So it's not really been a big deal, but it's supposed to get really warm through this week, up and through this next weekend. So it's time to take care of the last part of the setup for the tomato bucket system, and that's to put the irrigation in. And as I do it, I just kind of want to show you what it is that I'm using and just kind of how it works. That way, maybe it'll give you some ideas if you're looking to do a similar setup to this. Perhaps it'll help you out a little bit. Now, real quick, I want to talk about the type of drip irrigation that I use, or the equipment that I use. I order everything I have from a company called Drip Depot, dripdepot.com. Now, I'm not associated with these guys in any way, but I'm just kind of one of those dedicated customers where if somebody treats me right, I just keep going back. And these guys have always got really good prices, and they're super helpful. So if you're not quite sure what you need, you can get a hold of them. They'll ask for your layout or your garden setup. And essentially they can put together a whole package for you if you're not quite sure what you're after. I did a little bit of research beforehand, and it's really easy to figure out. It's really not that difficult. So basically I've got just a couple 100 feet of this 1/2 inch irrigation tubing. This is like the main line. And all of these fittings, 1/2 inch fittings. And, you know, really, if you know how to put Legos together, it's the same concept. I mean, these things just fit together. They screw right on. They're super easy to cut. And, you know, you put your T's and your valves and everything wherever you want them. Really simple, really simple. I mean, anybody could do this, literally. And the cost, you know, versus using like soaker hoses, it's actually cheaper to go this way, and you're going to get better coverage and more direct coverage for your plants. So I highly recommend going with a drip irrigation system over soaker hoses or something like that. So as I was saying, I use the 1/2 inch main line, and I just put my emitters directly on the main line. And I use these little scrubblers, which are really cool. They act like little sprinklers. And the nice thing about these is they require the pressure in the whole system to come up to a certain level before they start to emit. And what that does is it stops, you know, sometimes you've got low spots and high spots in your irrigation. And if you don't have pressure regulated emitters, the low spots will get more water and the high spots will get no water, basically. Well, with these, it requires the whole system to be even, so before it starts to emit, and that way everything gets even coverage. So it's really cool. It works out really well, and these little sprinkler heads are they're a lifesaver. Like I said, they're just awesome. And really, that's all my setup is. I put the whole thing together probably within 30 minutes. You know, I just come out here and I kind of measure and I cut and I put my fittings where I want them. 30 minutes later, everything is set up. I think the setup that I use for the tomato bucket system alone probably cost me like maybe $25. But I bought everything together for the straw bale garden as well. And I think total invested, I have like $80 to $100 invested. And I still got just tons of extra line and tons of extra parts, which is great to have. Keep that extra stuff around because, you know, these emitters, they can be cleaned, but I find it's easier just to replace them. If something's going wrong with them, I'll pluck them. I'll put a new emitter in. If I got a leak in my line, which almost never happens, I can just cut it, splice it in a new piece. Super simple. Very easy stuff. So that is what the the drip irrigation line and emitters are. And now it's time to get them set up here in the garden. So let's kind of take a look at that. Now, just as a note, I'm using the same setup for like the last 3 or 4 years. And basically, once I'm done with the lines, I just kind of pull them out and I put them in storage. That way I don't have to rebuild everything every year. I just drag it out, put it back up, turn it on and test it. If anything needs to be replaced, I'll replace it. But, you know, these lines and these emitters are really super sturdy. And I've even had them out in the elements through the winter time and only had to replace a couple of emitters. So they seem to last a very long time. They're not brittle. They're still holding up just fine. I imagine I can get another 2 or 3 years out of them before I start really having to replace the whole system. But anyway, let's go take a look at the bucket system and get our lines woven through the cages, and we'll get that taken care of. All right, so the most daunting part of this, as far as my setup here and reusing these, is going to be just feeding them back through the cages for the season. And it's not terrible. It would help to have a helper for something like this, but I just take my time and make do. Sometimes these emitters kind of want to get hung up on the cages, but again, just nice and slow. Just feed these through nice and easy. So I'm really a huge proponent of using this drip irrigation. Man, what a lifesaver. This stuff is just fantastic. It works so well. It's so dependable. I've never had a leak. At worst, I've accidentally hit it with a lawnmower and have to come through and patch it up real quick, and it takes like 5 minutes to patch it. And I'm just making sure my emitters line up with my buckets, and I can do some fine tuning here. No problem. But overall, that looks really good. My emitters, for the most part, line up with my buckets. Now what I'm going to do is take some zip ties and just zip tie the line to the cages. Make sure my cages are centered up. Make sure my line's centered up so that my emitters are as close to the center of the bucket as possible. And I'll go ahead and zip tie that, and it'll be sturdy for the year. I won't have to worry about it. So again, I just want to make sure my cages are centered up. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, this isn't rocket science, not by any means, but just somewhat centered up. And what I do is I position the cages so that the irrigation line actually touches the cage, and that just makes it easier to zip tie, and I can adjust the whole system later just by kind of moving the cage. I just love using this stuff. I mean, boom, just like that. And I'll do that for every single cage all the way down the line. As long as everything's centered up, for the most part, we'll be in good shape. All right, 10 minutes later, I've got all the irrigation set back up in the tomato buckets. Really easy stuff. I need to finish zip tying them and doing the final adjustments, but that's no big deal. I'm sure you don't want to watch me do that for the next 20 minutes. But anyway, probably the most important part of your automatic watering system is going to be your timer. And this is probably where I spent the most money, or well, for what it is. I think I picked this timer up for around $50 US on Amazon. But you know what? This thing has taken a beating and just keeps on going. I put batteries in it, AA batteries, you know, once every 2 years, and they just last forever. They seem like they just keep on going. I've never had issues with water leaking in. And this thing just works great. This is an Orbit brand, and it's a 3-stage. So down here I've got 1 and 2. These are on a timer. So one of these goes out to the straw bale garden. The other one goes to the tomato bucket system. And the third one is a manual. So if you just want to hand water or something like that, this one here that's not on a timer, if you want to turn it on, you just pull this switch down and that turns the water on. And that's really handy. I think most of your automatic timers will have that. If not, make sure you get that because you're going to want it. If I had another recommendation, I would say decide how many timers you need and get one more. because it seems like, you know, when I bought this, I thought, okay, so 2 is going to be perfect. It'll take care of both gardens. Plus I've got I can hand water if I want. And then it quickly realized that, man, I sure could have used another timer. That would have been great. So I will be upgrading eventually, but for now, this thing works great. And I've been using this for 4 or 5 years now. No problems with it whatsoever. And essentially, it's super easy to program. You know, you want to check your manual, but otherwise it's pretty easy. You can set your clock for whatever the time is currently. You can set what time you want your automatic watering to start, how long you want the water to run, how many times you want it to run in a 24-hour period, or how often. And I mean, you can set this for once a day, every 2 days, every 3 days, once a week, every 6 hours, every 12 hours. So there's, you know, there's a lot of variety to choose from. It's going to be everything you need, trust me. Whatever's on here, you're not going to wish you had something else, because it just covers pretty much everything. You can shut it off. You can put it on a rain delay. If you know it's going to rain for the next 2 days, you can set a rain delay on it, and it won't water for that specified period of time. And then it will start to water again after that specified period of time. Now, all these watering systems are similar, but they're all going to be different. So depending on which unit you pick up, obviously you're going to have to kind of figure out what your unit's capable of, and exactly how it operates. This Orbit brand timer, would I recommend it? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. This thing's been fantastic. Really worked out well. Never had any issues with it. I've changed the batteries one time since I've had it, and it still just keeps on rocking. So definitely pick up, you know, don't skimp. You don't have to break the budget on this, but don't skimp. And like I said, however many automatic lines you need, my advice is pick up one more, because you might realize that you want it somewhere down the road. So I'm going to go ahead and hook up the automatic timer, and then I want to prime the lines or flush them real quick. And I'll take a look at the scrubblers, the emitters, and see if any of those need to be replaced. And we should be good to go for the 2019 season. All right, so the next thing I want to do is flush out my irrigation lines at the beginning of the season, just in case something took home inside these lines, spiders, ants, other insects. So I'm just going to undo these clips at the end, which opens the end up and will allow water to flow directly through. And what that will do is prevent the emitters from getting clogged up with debris. So definitely want to do this. And I also flushed the hose, the main hose that runs off of here, just to make sure there was nothing in there as well. So let me go turn the water on and we'll flush these out real quick. All right, it's looking good. I'm just gonna open these up a little bit just to make sure there's nothing stuck in that kink. Just give it a wiggle. Just wiggle it. Just a little bit. All right, cool. You know what? That should work just fine. All right, now that we shut the water off, I just want to close the ends up on these drip lines again. So I'm just going to fold it over and put this little clip on the end. And now that will stop any water from coming through here. And now any water that gets pushed into the system will come out through the emitters. So pretty handy. I think these little fittings cost me maybe 25 cents a piece, maybe 10 cents, something like that. A real bank breaker, let me tell you. And that's it. So we're flushed out now. Now all we have to do is pressurize the system, check the emitters, and if any of them need to be replaced, we'll replace them, and set our timer up to turn on and off when we want it to, and we're good to go for the season. Now, of course, I'll adjust the timers depending on the weather. So obviously, if it's hotter, we're going to water more and more often. Cooler, rainy days like we're having so far this year, I might water every 2 days, literally, until these plants get bigger. Then I'll water them at least once a day. because they get very thirsty. But you know, you just play that by ear. That's an experience thing. So it is what it is. All right, guys, for the grand finale, let's pressurize the system and let's see how we're looking. All right, 3, 2, 1, water on. Wow, it looks great. You know, I just love these little scrubblers. The sprinkler effect that they have has a great coverage on them. It's just perfect for these 5-gallon buckets. I've got a couple emitters in this system that are spraying a little wonky. I will clean them. If the cleaning doesn't work, I'll just replace them. But for the majority of these sprinklers look really good. Their coverage is perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. Well, I say the setup went pretty well. You know, 35 minutes total, and you know, the whole thing's up and running. Really, the only thing I have left to do back here now is just clean up, because it's kind of a disaster. I've got kind of bricks and stuff laying everywhere. I'm going to go through and just really inspect each one of those emitters, and if anything needs to be cleaned or replaced, it's as simple as just plucking it out, cleaning it, or replacing it, pushing it right back in where the old one was. So super easy there. Really shouldn't need a tutorial for that. That's really simple stuff. So no worries there, guys. This irrigation equipment is so easy to work with. I would say anybody could do it. Like I said, if you can put Legos together, you can put irrigation line together. Really simple stuff. So with that being said, it looks like the tomato bucket system is a go for liftoff. So we'll be in good shape this summer as long as everything else goes well. We're going to get some rockin' tomatoes towards the end of this summer for sure. All right, guys. Hey, thanks again for joining me today here in the Brew City Garden, or the tomato bucket system garden. And if you got any questions at all, just leave them in the comments below. I will definitely get to you and answer those questions for you as soon as I can. Otherwise, I want you guys to have an awesome day. And until next time, we'll see you.